Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Oh, no.
Ready? Is it better? You ready? Sorry about that audio trouble on our end. Good morning. It is Monday, May 10th, 2021. This is the virtual workshop meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:00 a.m. We'll start off with roll call. Commissioner Richard Byrne.
Here.
Commissioner Susan Gay.
Here.
Commissioner Ed Stronowski.
Good morning, here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Pat Caluzzi.
Here.
Commissioner Jay Legree.
Here and not muted.
And I'm Mayor Stan Mills. We have a full complement. We're able to formally conduct business today. Thank you all for being here. With that, I'd like to welcome everybody that's clicked in to watch us, and also wanted to thank everybody the participants that have registered in advance, and those members of the public that did register in advance to talk today are Carol Everhart of the Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce, Walter Brittingham, David Green of Cape Water Tours, Dr. Michael Trejos, Mike Strange, and Jan Conacy. I welcome those that signed up and registered in advance to speak. You will, of course, will be called on at appropriate times during the agenda to offer your feedback and your input on those topics. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to correspondence, and I don't have any correspondence identified that we received. So with that, we'll go to the city manager's report.
Okay, stand by 1 minute, Mayor.
Stand by. We have still having audio troubles.
Okay, we're good.
Ready?
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. So city officials, as well as Sussex County legislators and others, attended a dedication last Friday for the Grove Park Canal Dock. The dock is not yet officially open to the public, so that wasn't the official opening, but it was a festive occasion. The city has a few safety items it still needs to take care of, and the city will announce when the dock officially opens. When it does, residents and visitors will be able to launch kayaks from the dock, fish, or tie up a boat at the dock for 30 minutes. More to come on that. The Grove Park and Stokely Street Park playgrounds have officially been reopened. Children are encouraged to wash their hands before and after playing on the equipment, practice social distancing, and follow CDC guidelines. Per revised guidelines, the city will not be sanitizing any of the play equipment, so we encourage the users to do that. The Rehoboth Beach parking season begins May 28th, Friday, May 28th. Parking at meters or by permit only from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. and except for meterless Mondays, when free parking will be available from 4 p.m. on. This season, meters are being installed at Grove Park for the first time. Additional pay stations, those that use license plate numbers rather than space numbers, will be installed there beginning May 19th. This week, Apple Electric will be installing 2 electric vehicle charging stations in the Convention Center parking lot behind the fire station. The 2 charge point stations will be able to charge 4 vehicles at one time. Once the new stations are operational, the city will disconnect the existing single vehicle EV stations at the Henlopen condominiums. They've been increasingly more difficult to maintain. We've had them there for about 6 years now. The Lake Avenue Streetscape Phase 2 project, DelDOT conducted its final pre-inspection, and the contractor has a few punch list items to address. We anticipate work will be completed by the end of May. And the city completed its annual bulk pickup service the last week of April. And we very much appreciate the cooperation of residents, which allowed us to complete the service throughout the entirety of the city in just 1 week rather than 2 weeks. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan, Commissioner Gay, you can tell your husband, we see him sneaking around in the background.
He's on his way out.
Thank you, thank you, Sharon. I do believe the bulk pickup went well, especially considering we missed one session last year, so appreciative of you bringing that back. Any other questions for the city manager? Commissioner LeGree.
City manager, is there any way, I know there are meters on those 2 spots for charging by the Henlopen. Is there any way we could find out how much electricity we distributed during the past 6 years? Or I'm sure they made meter readings.
We can check with the University of Delaware folks. I don't know if that's even possible, but actually they've been a little unresponsive to us, but we can look into that.
That would be fun to know, and it would be good to be able to compare that with the usage that we're going to get at the public parking area by City Hall. I'm sure we're going to do a lot more in the new spot than we did in the old, but it'd be fun to know, but don't spend a lot of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, along those same lines, are the new charging stations, does the city own them or do we lease them? And is there a charge for the use of them?
You own them, and yes, there's a charge for them.
There is a charge, and we do own them.
Thank you.
Plus, they have to pay for the parking space, correct?
Correct.
Same formula apparently as for the original ones. Commissioner Gay, did you have a question?
No, I was going to ask that. So there are the meters, the charging stations are located in paying parking spaces, as well as there being a charge for the charging.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commissioners? If not, I overlooked identifying some other members that are in attendance today. And I apologize. I wanted to recognize that the city manager Sharon Lynn is here, city solicitor Glenn Mandalis, project coordinator Evan Miller, Kevin Williams, public works supervisor, executive secretary Margaret Carson, and IT supervisor Max Walton, and Ann Womack. As I've said before, it takes a lot to run a meeting, and I just wanted to share that with you. Also wanted to remind everybody that if you go online into the city's portal, you'll be able to access today's agenda as well as support documents that are ready prior to the meeting are embedded into the agenda and accessible to the public. With that, we'll go to the city solicitor. You were done, Sharon?
Yes, I was.
All right, we'll go to the city solicitor's report.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing that I wanted to mention for the benefit of the commissioners and the public is that you'll maybe recall that some time ago, there was an application at 330 Rehoboth Avenue, which is the corner of Rehoboth and State Street. There was an application for a change in zone. If you remember, that parcel is zoned commercially in the front on the Rehoboth Avenue portion and then residentially in the back. That application got deferred basically at the planning commission level because there is some litigation going on with ownership issues at that location. That's all been worked out, and it's back on the planning commission's agenda for this Friday's meeting. So it's one of the things that you as commissioners referred to them several months ago, but they're bringing it back up now based upon the ownership issues being resolved. That's all I have.
All righty. Any questions for the city solicitor? Seeing none, we'll go to the next item, which is committee reports. We'll start off with the Environment Committee report, including recommendations that they have for us. Commissioner Byrne. Here.
Mayor, commissioners, guests, and staff, thank you so much for this opportunity. I am going to take a few minutes to give a little background on this and then bring us up to the current time and then open it for discussion, and obviously then this will move along. As I reported in January, the Environment Committee, going back many months pre-COVID, has had a great many discussions regarding the negative impacts of single-use plastic products on our environment. It's an ongoing discussion that permeates all of society these days because the problem is so wide and is having such a negative impact. So the committee has discussed for many months, has researched the problem, has looked at what other organizations are doing, what other communities and municipalities are doing, what they have done, what the options could be for our community. And pre-COVID, we're ready to move ahead and bring some information to the commissioners regarding a ban on single-use plastic products. COVID hit and that changed so much, and it certainly changed a lot regarding the economy of our local businesses. And so the committee backed off, and in collaboration, communication with the Chamber of Commerce, Main Street, and so on, took a close look at what could be possible given the impact of COVID on our businesses. And I will come back to that in just a minute. But I want to jump back a little bit now in history and focus more on plastic straws in our environment. If we go back to June 4th of 2018, a group of 4 fifth grade students from Rehoboth Elementary School made a really fun, interesting, and knowledgeable type of presentation to the commissioners. It was just a few months prior to me becoming a commissioner. I was sitting in the audience and I was incredibly impressed. And the moms and dads and teachers of these kids were up in the front rows, and the kids had all of their support. So those 4 fifth grade students put on a presentation called Strawless Rehoboth. And through posters and communication and even a song, they talked about what they were doing in the school and then expanded that to why straws are so bad and what should we know about them. And let me just quote a few things from those kids that day. Why are straws so bad? Well, those fifth graders said that some plastic substances used to make straws are potentially toxic or carcinogenic. Bits of plastic confuse aquatic animals for food, and those animals can choke and perish on those. Over 500 million plastic straws are used every day in just the United States of America. No wonder millions of birds and marine animals die from plastic consumption. And I could go on and on with all of the good information those kids shared. But one of the things they ended up telling us was that it takes about 200 years for a plastic straw to decompose if it's not recycled in an appropriate way. And that was a very, very impressive presentation by those kids. And yet they went back to school, I think with the expectation that maybe something would happen in the city, because they talked about the importance of restaurants making some changes. Maybe city government could help with all of that. And yet the kids did some things within their school. They found a way to appropriately recycle single-use plastic products, to cut back, almost eliminate plastic straws, go to paper straws, go to compostable or biodegradable. And we have learned since that biodegradable are much more favorable than compostable, because there really isn't much composting going on, at least publicly, in the state of Delaware. So that was back just about 3 years ago. And then if I jump back to December 9th of 2019, we as a commission and mayor received a joint letter from the Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association and SOLA 3. And let me just quote from that letter. Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association and the Save Our Lakes Alliance 3 have come together to request that the city of Rehoboth Beach join communities, states and countries throughout the world and ban single-use plastics, including straws, bags, styrofoam, within the city limits of Rehoboth Beach. Down to the last paragraph of that jointly signed letter, Rehoboth Beach has the opportunity to be a leader in removing these pollutants from our local environment. Our BHA and Solar 3 urge you to take it and pass an ordinance banning single-use pollutants that harm our natural environment, including our freshwater lakes, our ocean, and the bays, jointly signed by Sally Foreman and Mark Sanders. So a letter right to the point, a strong letter that asked us to do something very specifically and very importantly. Back in January 14th of this year, we as a commission and mayors had a discussion as I reported an update from the Environment Committee. You made some recommendations, you made some general comments. The committee listened intently to what you had to say and kind of sent us packing back to committee work to work some more on this. And like I say, the committee listened. Since then, the committee has also reached out again to SOLA 3 and has had some good discussions with SOLA 3, has reached out to the Marine Education Research and Rehabilitation Institute, otherwise known as MERR, headquartered in Lewis, which has a 20-year history of doing highly impressive work in our environment. I could go on and on, but we see them in the news frequently. We have had some good discussions with Executive Director Suzanne Thurman, who has given us additional kind of ammunition information about the detrimental effects of single-use plastics with a focus on straws and how most of the debris in our natural environment that is harming animals and marine life is plastic type products, including straws, and that they often break down, almost always break down in sunlight to become microplastics that then get consumed by the animals that get into our farmland, into our human food. And so there's a lot of information. There is no lack of information about the harmful effects of all of this plastic, including straws. And so what the Environment Committee has done through COVID has worked closely with Carol and the Chamber. And our Chamber has reached out to the restaurant community and essentially to do a survey. And so there was a survey done kind of pre-Christmas time that gave us some data. That's part of the brief report that's embedded in your agenda today. But essentially we found that from the few restaurants that reported, I think 24 reported out of 65 that were surveyed at that time, that there's a real mix going on. Some are providing plastic straws only on request. Some have gone to paper and or other materials that are biodegradable. Some said that now is an okay time to do it. Many expressed concern that particularly back in December, business was looking pretty bleak and they were very unsure of the future and that maybe this wouldn't be a good route to take right now to just simply try to ban plastic straws or any other single-use plastic items. And so we looked at that. We talked with Carol and her team as a committee, and we did back off and came back to it early this year, 2021, to look at, well, what is possible? What could we do? And we visited with Plastic Free Delaware that kind of has its arms out to communities all over the Atlantic coast and what has been successful. And what we have found through that research and that information is that communities that have successfully ended up banning single-use plastic products generally started out with voluntary compliance, requesting that businesses, requesting that eateries, requesting that food and beverage establishments think about this, that they look at options, that it would be a good idea to back off of the plastic. And so that's essentially where the Environment Committee has come out. I can tell you that currently SOLA 3, and Jan is on the line, she may want to speak to this when we get to that point, have been visiting with some of the large restaurant groups, Big Fish Restaurant Group, Soldel, and so on, doing some educating, doing some discussion around voluntary compliance, asking if restaurants might want to take some placards or some type of signage to educate their clientele about the negative impact, but also the fact that, maybe you don't need a straw. And that was one of the things the kids talked about 3 years ago, kind of the life of a plastic straw. It's very, very short. It's manufactured, uses fossil fuels, and that's another story that's contributing to our climate change. And then the straw eventually gets to the establishment, the eatery, and it's used for 10, 20, maybe 30 minutes, and then thrown away. And that's what single use, a very short life of a product that's having a detrimental effect, both from its manufacture to its post-use, is having. And so so to kind of quickly bring things up, Mayor, to the current time, and embedded in the report in your agenda today, is really a recommendation asking the commissioners to have a discussion, and then to move toward hopefully passing a resolution that recommends to our eateries, to our food and beverage establishments, that they offer plastic straws, or that they do not offer plastic straws, that they offer paper straws on request. And let me just read this rather than paraphrase it. The Environment Committee recommends the Rehoboth Beach Mayor and Commissioners request that effective January 1, 2022, all eating establishments, and as the committee have talked about that, we realize that perhaps a Royal Farms doesn't kind of technically or legally fall into eating establishment, and yet they probably give away hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of straws a week. So it's really food and beverage establishments offer only paper straws on request, excepting for situations where a plastic straw is required. And indeed, there are medical situations where a plastic straw is required and needs to be available. The committee would also like to have the support of the commissioners to visit eating establishments, to educate owners and managers, and offer table placards to use to educate and inform patrons. So that's the current, that's where the Environment Committee stands right now. And so we're coming back to the mayor and commissioners for some discussion, and hopefully to move toward a resolution of at this point, taking what is really kind of a baby step, not a world-changing kind of a ban, but that's how these things move ahead, by taking baby steps, making some impact, educating people, having opportunities to talk to people, and helping these establishments realize that they are not only going to help the environment greatly, they're not only going to help the image of our great beach town, but they're going to save money in the long run. So Mayor, Commissioners, that's the formal report. Happy to discuss more.
Thank you, Commissioner. With that, we'll go to Commissioner questions for Commissioner Byrne. Commissioner Calusi.
My only question is, why are we waiting to January 1 of 2022? I would think that this is a baby step. We're not banning plastic straws, although I think that that's something that we could consider. But as a baby step, it seems to me we could probably implement this sooner. I don't know how everyone else feels about that, but I think that just as a requesting businesses or food and drink establishments to offer only paper straws would be a good thing. And I also think the placards would be something I would hope the city would create and distribute to these businesses. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Commissioner. Commissioner
appreciate your
Legree.
comment.
Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Byrne, go ahead.
Yeah, and excuse me for interrupting, Mayor. Thank you for those comments. I could speak on behalf of the committee. They would love to jump into this effective before January. The discussion has been to be sensitive to everyone in terms of getting the word out. But one of the questions that a recent survey from the chamber did ask was about inventory of plastic straws. And while this isn't a ban, that question is not as relevant as if we were banning. But many of our eateries have 3 to 9 months of inventory. And so I was trying to be somewhat sensitive to that as well, that places have spent money on inventory, and we would hope that they would use it up. We don't want them to just throw that away either. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword. Certainly, the committee would welcome an earlier date. There's no doubt about that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. Commissioner Legree?
I agree with Commissioner Calusi. This ASAP is fine, but I also understand the logistics of using up your inventory and the hassle. But yeah, I'm with ASAP. I've been doing some research lately, and I am amazed at the amount of microplastics that are in the fish we eat. I read a report that said that probably every one of us who buys fish and consumes it probably also ingesting microplastics. This just bowled me over. I just can't get that. First off, I don't know how all this stuff gets out in the ocean, but obviously it does. And so, yep, it may be a small step, but I'm with Commissioner Calusi. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Gossett? Oh,
Yes,
I'm
good morning.
sorry. I'm sorry. Commissioner Byrne, you wanted to interject something again?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment and thank Commissioner Legree for his comments. And just to add to the microplastics that we're all consuming, but a couple of the statistics from MIR are that over 700 species of marine animals are eating plastic on a regular basis. And so it is going in, and it essentially goes in to the lower level animals who then get eaten by the larger fish and the larger fish. And so it just, kind of grows in mass within the food that we are eating. So it is a tremendous concern. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gossett, now, please.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks to the work of the committee in bringing this forward. I certainly support it. But Commissioner Burns, I would ask, is it possible that in developing the resolution from the city that we would be able to reach out to, again, Sodell or Big Fish and get a commitment from them that they would be a strong champion of this effort, and that they would, agree within the resolution to participate in this. I think it would certainly give it more credibility to the other individual operators. and just see what kind of reaction you would get from them. If you've already had some conversations, perhaps that could be the catalyst for others to participate and sort of follow the leader.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Commissioner Gossett, did you say reach out to Big Fish?
Well, Big Fish operates several restaurants. The Big Fish group operates several restaurants within the city, as does Sodell operates one.
Right, good, thank you. Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, first of all, Dick, I just want to say thank you again for bringing this forward when the Homeowners Association and Solar 3 requested it. I guess that was about a year and a half ago now. And, you know, I've been being on the solar board, it's something we address it at every one of our board meetings. And I think they do continue to be very eager to work with you and with the city to educate and to, you know, to have those placards. I guess one question I have is more of a couple of practical questions. First, I'm trying to figure out what our role is here. And if our role is to, you know, endorse the concept and pass a resolution, which I think is what's being asked. I was trying to think of other instances where we have done that and how it's worked out. And Glenn, you may know of other examples. I'm thinking of the anti-idling resolution that was done about 6 or 7 years ago. Have there been any others? Because what I don't know is how effective has that anti-idling resolution been? You know, it's not an ordinance. It's just basically a statement of our goal, but does it work? Does it accomplish what we want it to accomplish? And if not, then it's probably these ongoing educational efforts that are really going to be required, much more so than our just saying today that we support, you know, the concept. That's all.
Yeah, I guess I see this a little bit, Commissioner, as your statement of policy as a group of commissioners. So to the extent there are laws that are passed in the coming months and years that can get in line with this sort of an initiative, you're kind of sending a message to the community that it's the direction you're going. I can remember an additional resolution was the tree canopy resolution.
Yeah.
And so there was that one, there was the anti-idling. So I see them more as statements of policy of the commissioners as to the direction you're taking and the direction you'd like the community to go. As to effectiveness, I haven't seen the quantitative data to say what's worked and what hasn't worked. Education, in my view, always is effective.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Calusi?
Thank you. So I guess the question that I would have, and I don't know if anyone can answer this, but I mean, what is the cost of these straws, and what is the cost of the inventory that's sitting in somebody's on their shelf? It could be quite minimal, and so, you know, my thoughts would, why don't we do something like take back the straws, like we do take back the prescription drugs, you know, and have them destroyed in a environmental way that might make some sense, especially if we're talking about the amount of money that the cost of these straws is not that much. We ought to consider that, and maybe you have residents or people, interested parties who would contribute to such a thing in terms of take back the straws. Anyway, it's just an idea. I think we ought to accelerate this. I think waiting till January 1 is not necessary. I think, especially if we're only talking about a resolution and not banning it. So again, that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sernowski?
Thank you. And Dick, thank you for you and your committee. Just from a practicality standpoint, I know you mentioned talking to Big Fish Group and Sodell, but to kind of get the ball rolling, there's plenty of restaurants that have already been doing this for years in Rehoboth, Dogfish Head being one. So I think there's some examples, some leaders out there that have been doing this as an example for a while. So I would just consider that as well in marketing it. And I agree. I think waiting till January is probably too long, and trying to do it a little bit quicker is a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Legree?
Commissioner Byrne, have you had a chance to know where all these people are getting their straws? Does Cisco provide the bulk of the straws that are provided, or do they get them from some other source? And how much more expensive is paper straws than plastic? And maybe we could use that information in our education program. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Byrne. Did you want to respond?
Yeah, Commissioner Legree, I don't know for certain if it's the source, the vendor. I know that right now, I'm told by restaurants that generally paper straws are more expensive than plastic, but it's a volume kind of thing. And it's like a lot of things, out in the wholesale world, as volume changes, then prices drop. And so, that will happen over time. Certainly, as fewer of any product is consumed, it costs then the restaurant less. So we know that. And we could do some follow-up, Commissioner. Let me jump back to a comment that was made about, that Commissioner Gay made about resolutions. And it's a very appropriate kind of question and comment to raise. The key, from my perspective, on resolutions, I think follows along what the solicitor was saying. The key is follow-up. We can pass things that sound good and then go off and do a lot of other kinds of work. And anti-idling, I think, is an example of that. I was not a part of that. The Environment Committee has recently taken a look at that, but there's been no real follow-up. So has anything happened? Probably not. I think the key is follow-up. It's education, and it's what are the next steps. The Environment Committee intends to have next steps. I mean, I would dare say that the Environment Committee would see that after some number of months, a year of education, of working with people, that then we may move toward a ban, and that is if the state doesn't. We also know, because of COVID, that legislation was not introduced to the General Assembly this year around single-use plastic products, just because of the business climate and environment. But as that's changing for the better, I also know from Plastic Free Delaware and other organizations that there will be legislation coming to Dover in the next session. So while this last January one, single-use plastic bags in the large retailers were banned, again, that was kind of a baby step, a first step. There's a movement out there, at the state level to increase these things. If the state does it ahead of us or at the same time as us, that makes it so much easier, so much more efficient, and all of those good things. But the key to our resolution is follow-up, of having that make a difference. And education is certainly a part of that. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Before I comment, I'd like to go to the members of the public. Carol Everhart, are you on? Any comments about plastic straws?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, we conducted the surveys, and it was a very low response. The first one, of course, just asked what kind of, what category of dining they fell into and what kind of straws they used and how much inventory they had. We had a decent response from that. The second one, which related to a ban of any kind, we got a very, very poor response to. So I'm just going to give you the information that has been said to me. Number one, no one disagrees with the goal. It's a worthy goal. And I don't think there's an argument there that everyone would like to see less plastic. I will tell you that one of the consistent comments that is made by the business community in general is the more regulation there is on anything, the more they tend to go someplace where it's not as regulated. So that concerns me with regard to keeping our businesses downtown. We've already have the parking issue, and this is another regulation. Now, if it's going to be a policy and there's going to be a time frame, I think that's going to be easier to digest for the business community. And right now, they are still under duress because of changing regulations in COVID, changing rules. And while it's not directly related to the plastic, it certainly is a huge problem for them right now is they don't have help. So what I can say to you is, of those that answered, there was no opposition to some kind of a voluntary effort. They're just concerned over the practical parts of this, which is the inventory, the cost, the type of product they sell, and what type of straw will and will not work for them. I would just be remiss not to mention that it's continually said, the more regulation, the more concerned they are with staying in their current location. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Carol. Walter Brittingham.
Good morning. After over 30 minutes of discussion, I hope we can get it done quickly and not have to do it at another meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. David Green's not on. Dr. Trejos, did you want to say anything on this subject? Michael Strange, anything to say on this subject?
Just a quick comment that I think philosophically you're going in the right direction. I would make one comment, though, with regard to Jay's observation that we have discovered that even when it breaks down, it's still a contaminant and it comes back up the food chain to haunt us. And many years ago, lead in pipes, water pipes, used to be voluntary to take it out. It later was regulated because we found out that it's exceedingly detrimental. We're sort of seeing here, this is the canary in the coal mine, and we should do something. Thank you.
Thank you. Jan Conacy, she's not on. Thank you very much. That's the members of the public. I believe it's a very laudable goal to reduce the use of plastic straws in the city. And I think it would be good to convey that message that it's a laudable goal to reduce use of plastic straws for the eating establishments. As Commissioner Byrne indicated, other establishments in other towns have started with this baby step, voluntary compliance. I believe that says we're not putting it in ordinance form. It's a resolution. It's a recommendation that if we follow up with education, the sooner the better, and that we would get the restaurateurs in the mindset of maybe curbing ordering of straws the next time they need to and switching over to paper. So I'm all for accelerating this. What I'd like to do is have City Solicitor Glenn Mandalis work with Commissioner Byrne on a resolution and bring that forward to our June workshop meeting. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Legree? You're muted.
Now I'm good, I think. Yep, now
You're
I'm good. I think what Dick said is just critical. We have to follow up. We got to follow up, even if it's just a reminder to keep this in front of everybody. So when the next step comes, we won't have a lot of dismayed folks, because it is coming. I promise you. The microplastics in the fish just bowled me over, and It is coming. We got to get rid of plastics. My big enemy is styrofoam. We can't start soon enough on styrofoam. But yeah, let's make a resolution and then let's follow up. Maybe down the road somewhere we can especially if the state goes that direction. It won't be nearly as difficult to ban them. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Taluzzi?
Yes, I would like to see some cost information as far as straws. I mean, the last time I looked, it was like, I don't know if it was like $50, $60 for a case of 6,000 straws. I mean, that's somebody's dinner, you know? So anyway, if some cost information can be provided, we ought to know that, because, you know, people talking about how how this is influencing the restaurants, I think that would be worthwhile. Thank you.
All right, so additional homework there. I would like to throw this in there also as additional homework, Commissioner Byrne, that your report indicates that there would be an exception for situations where plastic straws are required. If you could help identify some of those situations, it might be helpful. I believe either in the poll or orally sometime earlier, it was articulated that ice cream shops, by example, need plastic straws, that their paper or compostable or biodegradable straws don't work for milkshakes. So that might be interesting information to have as well. With that, there's no more questions from the commissioners. We have a plan to go forward. We'll resume this topic at our June workshop. Thank you very much for your work, Commissioner Byrne, and please thank your committee members for their persistence over the years on this.
And thanks to all of you so much.
Thank you. With that, we'll go on to the next item, which is update on Wilmington, Baltimore Avenue Streetscape Design Project. If you recall, last time this was in front of us, we made some decisions on the path forward. At that point, those recommendations from the commissioners, which were based on recommendations from the task force, were passed on to the design engineering consultant. They've been diligently working on initial schematics of the area. They will be presenting those schematics sometime on or before May 26th. So our next task force meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, May 26th at 9 in the morning. And then I'm scheduling 2 more follow-up meetings, June 2nd and, if needed, June 9th. To be able to receive those schematics and act on them. Act on them meaning that we will analyze them and then select the one single schematic that we want further developed. And then we would pass that on to the commissioners. That's it. Any questions on that project? If not, I'll give members of the public the opportunity to speak up at the next item. With that, there's no old business identified. For new business, we've got some nominations to fill vacant seats. How this works is I'd like the chair to nominate their person and maybe give a couple sentences to sell us on them. And then, of course, at the next meeting, we would have them on the agenda for consideration and vote to receive their nomination and appoint them. And at that point, we will have the applications distributed to everybody. We'll start with the Animal Issues Committee. Commissioner Byrne is the chair. You have 2 seats apparently vacant.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'd like to formally nominate 2 individuals who have gone through the application process recently. And let me briefly introduce them. One is Deb Ward, W-A-R-D. She owns a residence on Hickman Street. She is employed in the area. She has an MBA degree from the University of Maryland in human resources. But very importantly to the work of the committee, she owns 2 dogs as fostered and rescued dogs, is an animal lover, very interested in animal welfare, and has been following the work of the Animal Issues Committee for a while and has a keen interest in it. And let me just say, by the way, that once these applications came in, I have done a phone interview with these applicants. So I have followed up with what I think are appropriate kinds of questions, and also given the applicant an opportunity to ask questions and then to understand how a committee works, what the nature of the committee is, and what the expectations are for participation. So that's one applicant, Deb Ward. The second is Terry Smith. Has a residence on both Queen Street and in the Arc condominium. He's employed locally in the finance industry. However, some of you may well know Terry. He grew up here in Rehoboth Beach. He's a product of Rehoboth Elementary School, Cape High School. He's been the Kiwanis Club Citizen of the Year. He's the past president of the local Meals on Wheels. He's a driver for the Rehoboth Beach Food Rescue. And very importantly to all of us, he's a volunteer firefighter with the Rehoboth Beach Volunteer Fire Company. He's a huge animal advocate and has just a lot of interest in the work of this committee. So I think that the two of them would become very, very outstanding committee members. I formally nominate each of them.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions for? If not, we'll go to the next. That is the back to Dick, representing Chair of the Environment Committee.
Okay, thanks again. We do have a vacancy for a voting member on the Environment Committee, meaning someone that resides, owns property or has a business within the city. And I'm formally nominating Eric Seward, S-E-W-A-R-D. He has residence on 6th Street. He worked for DENREC at one time, did environmental work for a number of years for DENREC. A lot of his work is in the wastewater permitting area. He understands sustainability issues, has a real keen interest in recycling issues. He's currently employed by Merck Animal Health in Millsboro. And again, in that role, he works in an environmental capacity. So again, with this individual, Eric Seward, I formally nominate him and think that he has the capacity to become an outstanding contributing member of the Environment Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions? If not, we'll move on to the Street and Transportation Committee. Commissioner Caluzzi is the chair.
Am I? Okay. Thank you. So I would like to formally nominate John Dewey. He's a part-time resident who lives at 105 Scarborough Avenue in Rehoboth Beach. He's been a part-time resident for about 35 years. He has been on the parking task force and has an interest in the Streets and Transportation Committee. And we really do need some voting members, and he is the first of a couple that I'm hoping to move forward with. He has a doctor of education. She's a doctor of education, and he's retired currently. And I think he would be a great addition to our committee. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions? If not, we'll give the opportunity for the public to speak up on the Wilmington-Baltimore project and any of the nominations before we move to the next topic. Carol, anything on the Wilmington-Baltimore or the committee nominations?
Can you hear me, Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, no comment at this time.
All righty, thank you very much. Walter Brittingham, Wilmington, Baltimore, or nominations?
Thank you. Only one question. fine on everything else. The last person, John, or whatever his name was, the part-time person, where does he live when he doesn't live here?
I can answer that if you like. Newcastle, Delaware.
Thank you.
I'm muted, sorry. Yeah, Newcastle, Delaware, sorry.
Thank you. David Green's still not here. Michael Trejos, anything on Wilmington, Baltimore, or nominations? Michael Strange?
Oops.
Hello.
Nothing
I'm
on
sorry.
the nominations on the Wilmington, Baltimore. I look forward to their schematics, but I'm concerned, at least based on the initial meeting that I was at, and Mayor, you did a great job to trying to herd the cats, but it seemed that there was significant conflict between goals and objectives and what the streetscapes were really supposed to provide and what the significance was and how to grade that. So we'll be looking very rigorously at what the consultants provided and see if it's actually rational. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Trejos, were you?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. No, I have no further comment on this item or the nominations. And again, thank you for being diligent with me. I'm actually in active medical practice right now, seeing patients, so I will try to be there appropriately, hopefully for item D that I'd like to speak to. Thank you.
As long as you promise not to stop in the middle of surgery to talk with us.
Oh, I have no intention of doing that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Doctor. With that, we'll go to the next item of new business is discuss a directive to reduce light pollution from city-owned light fixtures, primarily boardwalk lights and street lights. If you recall, some time ago, I don't know if it was almost a year ago, the three citizens, Jan Conacy, Kate Markert, and Frank Cooper, formed their own little private committee and made a presentation to the Boardwalk Committee, I think initially, on dark skies program and what it means. And essentially, to condense it very, very greatly, it dealt with reducing light pollution. And it identified or defined light pollution very simply as sky glow, glare, light trespass, and energy waste. And from there, the Boardwalk Committee took up the mantle and thought that was a great idea to do. And they looked at it favorably. Concurrently, the Jan's Little Committee also made a presentation to the Environment Committee. And the Environment Committee also was in favor of looking further at reducing light pollution and adopting a dark skies program. In looking back through committee reports of the Environment Committee, I came across a report dated January 20th. And on one side of the report, it made a recommendation to the commissioners for the commissioners to adopt and advertise market International Dark Sky Day, which we did. But on the other side of the report, it indicated that the Environment Committee passed a motion at their regular meeting on January 14th, essentially to adopt the Dark Skies program. And let me see if I have. Share the screen here. This is dated January 14th. Again, this was presented to us as a report, but it was not verbally given. And in my opinion, it was overlooked. So the Environment Committee recommends City of Rehoboth Beach adopt recommendations of dark skies for all or new replacement lighting, and particularly for environmentally sensitive areas such as the boardwalk. See presentation made earlier. It indicates we should choose dark sky compliant lighting for boardwalk, new replacement lighting in the city, with the goal of becoming dark sky compliant community, and etc. Again, it references the CDP. So we have a citizens group that is in favor of dark skies, or at least reducing the goal of reducing light pollution. We've got the Boardwalk Committee that wants to reduce light pollution. We've got the Environment Committee that wants to reduce light pollution. So in talking with Public Works Director Kevin Williams, he indicated he's got some projects coming up replacement of lights in the median of Rehoboth Avenue, by example. And that for selection of the light fixtures themselves, he wanted some direction. So I said, well, I'm convinced that this is ready to go in front of the commissioners, so that what we could do is something as simply as make a directive that all future light fixtures purchased for the city, they don't need to be dark sky compliant in my mind, but they need to achieve dark sky compliance, or in other words, reduce light pollution. And I would be very happy with that. So I wanted to get you all's feedback to see if we would be willing to either informally or formally give a directive to the city manager and Public Works that all future light fixtures be considered to reduce light pollution in the city. Any comments? Commissioner Byrne.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you for getting us back on track with this. Jay's Boardwalk Committee has had some really robust discussions on this topic, as has the Environment Committee, and triggered by the work of Jan Consi, Frank Cooper, and Kate Markert's work of putting that presentation together. I think that there's just a tremendous amount of good information there. It's compelling information. Some of the more recent information that Commissioner Legree has shared and talked about, talks about the importance of protecting the nocturnal environment. And it's, that you direct light where it's needed. You don't have any brighter light than is absolutely necessary, that you are very conscious about the purpose of the light. It's not just lighting the night. If it's for security, then you light the area that needs to be secure for human beings, as opposed to lighting the entire beach and the west side of the boardwalk, and that you limit the amount of the wavelength to the least amount necessary and needed. And that when we have highly sensitive areas like our beach and around some of our lakes, that we're very, very concerned about where the light is going there, that we're not driving turtles, for example, toward the light, which brings them up under roads, highways, and so on, as opposed to them staying in their natural environment. So this is a very, very important issue, one that we're learning more about. And I know Commissioner Legree has recently been involved in a meeting or two on this with the organization, and can add to this topic. Thank you, Mayor, for getting this back in front of us.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, thank you. I would strongly agree with giving the direction to the city manager and Director of Public Works for selecting where we have the opportunity for purchasing or installing of new light fixtures in the public domain to go with dark sky compliant, or at least respective of those outlines from dark skies going into the future if we have some replacements that are needed. I also would think that we should look at some time in advance to our sign ordinance, because signs are certainly a great contributor to lights on public ways and what have you. But if we could first begin with just our own control of street lights and boardwalk lamps, that type of thing would be the place to begin. But I also, as I said, think we should take a look at our sign ordinance with regards to lighting.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Legree?
Yeah, there are some fairly good guidelines that the International Dark Sky Association has that we could follow without having to achieve compliance. And the goal is stopping light pollution. It's a very simple goal. And I can only speak for the boardwalk, but we're very interested in doing that. The Boardwalk Committee is, and I think we're going to have some more discussion today about that might reflect on that as I read the agenda. So yeah, we know of some experts. The Dark Sky Association has experts on their staff, and the technical information is out there. Once we've identified our polluting mechanisms, and one of the things that the Boardwalk Committee is going to do before our June meeting is everybody's going to take a look and see if we can see where the pollution is coming from, and that's just for the boardwalk. And I don't have to do anything but look out my upstairs window in the middle of the night to see sources of light pollution. So I think we should go forward. We may not need to achieve dark sky compliance. We just maybe should think about reducing light pollution wherever possible. So I haven't committed very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Calusi?
Thank you. Yes, I think that light pollution is a big issue. And given the fact that we don't purchase light fixtures that often, I would consider, or think we should consider going with compliant fixtures, because when's the next time we're going to purchase, another fixture? Better to just go ahead and spend the money now, or whenever we are going to upgrade the fixtures, and go with compliant fixtures as opposed to ones that may be going towards compliance.
Well, I disagree with that, and I've shared that each time, because I believe if you go with dark sky compliance, that you're paying a premium for the light fixtures when there are probably dozens of alternatives that can achieve the same thing. Regardless, I think I would like to leave it up to the Public Works Director and the City Manager to make that final decision or recommendation. If it's a big change, then likely it needs to be a recommendation to come back in front of the Commissioner and or the committees. But I've stated that each time, and I still think we can achieve light reduction by the purposeful selection of light fixtures. Commissioner Jay Legree?
Mayor, you can get compliant fixtures without having to be dark sky compliant. It's just a matter of degree, and as Commissioner Calusi indicated, it's I think it's something we should do. We should purchase fixtures that are dark sky compliant, or at least able to be rendered compliant, because it's just a matter of choosing the temperature, the wavelength, and the fact that it can be dimmed. And I would not be in favor of buying fixtures that are not capable of of stopping the pollution. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Srnowski?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree that we should probably go in the direction of, if not being compliant, being better at light pollution. My only hesitation would be that we don't have a mismatch of different fixtures, and we have a consistent, coherent look throughout our city. Thank you.
Well, that's going to happen. Your boardwalk lights are not going to meet your street lights on Rehoboth Avenue, and may or may not match your street lights on Baltimore and Wilmington. So I think the secret there, or the key to this, again, is that we reduce light pollution, and we select the proper light fixture for the proper area. With that, is there any other comment? I think how I want to proceed with this is we'll develop a resolution so we can articulate what we want and get that in front of the commissioners. I'll probably reach out to the chairs of the committees for their input on this. If there's no other commissioner comment, let's go to the members of the public. Carol Everhart, anything on reduction of light pollution, but through selection of light fixtures in Rehoboth?
The only thing that's been mentioned to me is keeping the safety factor, especially on the boardwalk, in mind when you're getting the lighting. Beyond that, no comment.
Correct. Thank you, Carol. Walter Brittingham?
Well-placed comments. Good job.
Dr. Trejos? We'll wait for him. Michael Strange?
Yeah, the only comment is one of, as you were pointing out, Mayor Mills, is that something may not be dark sky compliant, but it may be compliant from the standpoint of lumens, the measurement of light intensity, and that's really the key. And I would point out to the city, and I'm sure most people recognize this, that if you look at in the residential areas, the houses that have been constructed in the last really 7 to 8 years, and really more for commercial purposes than residential use. Most people used to have a light on the front of their house and a light in the back of their house for illuminating the area when needed. And now when you look at the homes, you'll find 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 15 lights that are on 24/7, and in most cases on only during the darkness hours, that illuminate their trees, their plants, their walkway. And it's really gotten to be absurd. And everyone, because these properties are being commercially rented in a residential area, they're trying to draw attention to their home for commercial and financial purposes. And I think particularly in the residential areas, we need to take a more forceful approach to hopefully guiding people to not make every house look like Disney World from a lighting standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, right now we're focused, that may be a future item, but right now we're focused on City of Rehoboth beach-owned fixtures. Thank you, Mike. Dr. Trejos, are you not on there? Oh, and Jan is on? Oh, Jan, you come on?
Yes, I'm on.
Go ahead.
No, I don't really have much to say. I think that, I have to agree with Edward. I think depending on the light we should have consistency among our lighting depending upon what is being lit. And in reference to Carol's comment, I don't think Carol saw our presentation, but one of the things that dark sky compliant lighting does is put the lighting where it's needed for safety instead of shining it, up in the sky. And it really does. And one of our slides showed, how dark sky compliant lighting, shading the top of it, keeping it out of the sky makes a safer environment than having the light diffused throughout the whole vicinity. So.
Thank you, Jan. And your Dark Skies presentation was made to the Board of Commissioners January 4th, 2021, in case anybody wants to look it up. It's an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. With that, we have our direction, and hopefully we'll see this at their June workshop meeting and continued discussion. Thank you very much for your input. With that, we'll go to the next item of new business, is discuss proposed wireless antenna installations on the boardwalk. Report on delay by Verizon in installing wireless antennas on existing light poles on the east edge of the boardwalk. And number 2, discuss a city proposal to relocate antenna installations from east side of the boardwalk to west edge or west side of the boardwalk. I want to let you know that discuss a city proposal, that means from Stan, from myself. I didn't know how to word it. It's just something put out there to garner discussion and feedback. With that, what I'd like to do is just start off with a review of the existing wireless antennas on the boardwalk. As many of you know, we have, if you look at the little cupola up here, and there's a round cylinder, that's apparently a 4G antenna. This is a installation by AT&T. This is one of the 2 wireless antennas by AT&T currently on the boardwalk. This one happens to be on the west side of the boardwalk, again, because it's at the Delaware Avenue restroom. The other AT&T antenna is also, I believe, a 4G. It's that can at the top of the recreational light up here, and it is on the east side of the boardwalk. So those are the two existing ones. If you recall, Verizon's come forward and asked to put antennas on the existing, put them on the light poles on the east edge of the boardwalk. They're not on the existing poles, so to speak, literally, because they are replacing the light poles, but they will be the same exact design. And this is the design that they presented to us in their permits. You can see it's our normal column base, light pole and globe with their 5G type antenna at the top there. This is an example of a Verizon antenna set up over near the Baltimore Inn over here. It's got apparently what I believe is a 4G antenna up top and a 5G antenna array here. And whether or not this is the exact manufacturer of the 5G array that would be going on to the boardwalk lights, I don't know. I also don't know whether it would be this messy, for lack of better descriptor. But that's an example there. As you know, Kevin Williams has showed before and given us a status report on proposed Verizon antennas on the boardwalk. And I would like to turn it over to Kevin. Kevin, if you could just give us an update on the number of Verizon antennas that are going up on the boardwalk. What is the status of permitting, and what are some logistics of their delay? They had indicated that they were hopeful to get these installed by summertime, and now we understand that's not going to happen. So we'd like to understand what's caused the delay that's giving us this extra opportunity today to further discuss their installations.
Thank you, Mayor. To date, we've received applications for 16 sites on the boardwalk from Verizon, all on replacement poles that would be put up on the east side of the boardwalk. Back in, I believe it was January, when we had a council meeting or board meeting addressing the topic, they came back after that and realized they couldn't meet what they had shown us on their permit applications with respect to basically the conduits at the bottom. They told us they were going to be able to keep everything inside of that base, and we wouldn't have conduits running up from the boardwalk or under the boardwalk and then up into the pole itself. So since that time, they've been requesting information from us with respect to, could we move them adjacent to the existing poles and that type thing. And they requested copies of our structural foundation reports from back when we replaced the boardwalk some years ago. And since then, we really haven't heard much from them with respect to those sites. So I think they're still trying to figure out how to properly address getting it to look like, we asked them to make it look. So again, no formal resubmissions since that January board meeting and the discussions thereafter.
So I'm sorry, are their permits approved, but they're waiting to figure out the logistics, or the permits are still pending?
It's my understanding the permits are still pending. We certainly haven't approved any of the replacement poles, so I don't think we would have approved a permit.
All righty, thank you.
Have that.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that. So here we've got the illustration shown here with all the locations proposed by Verizon. Of course, they're going to be put on or basically on our existing east side boardwalk light poles. Here's a blow up and enlargement of the plan they submitted. And what's important to note here is that they're if you look at the bottom, the conduit comes under the boardwalk and directly up into the center of the light. Here's what it looks like. The problem is they found out that there's no way to get additional fixtures up in there. Obviously we want to maintain an aesthetic, and this type of thing would not be acceptable with exposed conduits. I want to give you one illustration by example. This is again the AT&T. It's the only AT&T antenna. It's the only one that utilizes a recreational light, but I wanted to show you a similar problem that Verizon's having that we find unacceptable. I do, at least. Here is the foundation for the recreation light. You can see it's a solid. There's no way to get additional conduits or wiring in there. This is what the base of the existing recreational lights look like. It's nice looking. It's all covered. And if you look at the base of this picture, you'll see what we ended up with AT&T. That's the finished product, I guess. It seems to me it needs to have some kind of shroud put on it for safety and also for aesthetics. But that's the kind of thing that I personally would like to avoid in the Verizon. Now here is a sample, where we just were looking at a recreational light installation. This is a light installation on the narrow south part of the boardwalk. This is a typical installation on the north side of the boardwalk. There are these metal boxes that form the base that are underneath the light poles. And these metal bases are just slightly at the level where they protrude above the structural joist, so that when you add the decking, it's absolutely flush with the decking. And one of the options, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the options proposed by Verizon was to abandon this location here, move the light pole down, say down here, pour a new foundation, new light pole, put all their new conduits in there, and then they have to deal with this metal box. Now remember, this metal box is flush with the wood boardwalk, and that Verizon had proposed, as I understand it, to just put a cap over top of this, and Public Works has said, no, that's not acceptable. Why? Because it would be a tripping hazard. It's also aesthetically not pleasing. So, while Verizon has this pause, obviously it's not going to happen, they're not going to get these installed for summertime. There's a pause in all this. I wanted to let us have the opportunity to see if we had any alternatives. Are we still happy with them utilizing the east side of the boardwalk for their antennas? Do we want to revisit installing poles on the west side of the boardwalk? This is happens to be an AT&T pole, and it's got the 4G CAN antenna on top. But this shows you maybe a clean example of a pole that could possibly be used by Verizon on the west side of the boardwalk with a 5G antenna on there, so that these were lined up and down the west side of the boardwalk, leaving our existing light poles alone and not having to replace any, and kind of leaving a clean aesthetic on the east side of the boardwalk. So what happens, here's an example at Stokely. Mike Strange lives on Stokely Street. Again, it shows the light poles are nice and clean on the east edge of the boardwalk that don't have any antennas yet, of course. This is one antenna on a pole. Of course, it's maybe twice as high as the boardwalk poles, but it's an AT&T installation. And so when I say consider, do we want to consider having AT&T reevaluate putting antennas on the west side of the boardwalk? West side of the boardwalk means different things. In the south area here, it means somewhere in between, say, the middle of the dune here and the end of the street, because I would not want antennas right on the west side of the boardwalk. But and this is a street view. This is just some different views from the beach. It shows that both the light pole and the AT&T tower should have reasonably good signal from the beach. But again, the best thing is for you all to go walk the boardwalk and take a look and do some evaluating. We're not going to come to any decisions today necessarily, obviously, but if you walk the boards and you look at your preference of antennas up and down the east side or new antennas as shown somewhere on the ends of the street. This is a different example of antennas on the west side of the boardwalk. It can be, because of the width of the sidewalk is so much greater, almost 4 times the width of the south, the antennas could be on the direct west edge of the boardwalk, anywhere between there and the end of the street, whereas, again, down at Stokely, they need to be back, say, at least 20, 30, 40 feet off the boardwalk. I think that's basically... So for me, this exercise is to utilize this pause in Verizon's installation to see, do we want to propose anything different? Do we want to change our mind? Obviously, in all these discussions, what's been very important to me and what I've heard time and again is the importance of aesthetics, and that we don't want to do any harm to our brand. Now is the time to speak up and seek any alternatives, or to reiterate and confirm that we're happy with antennas on the east side of the boardwalk. With that, I'll turn it over to the commissioners. Have any thoughts? Do we just stay the course, or do we want to propose any changes to locations of wireless antennas on the boardwalk? Commissioner LeGree?
Thank you, Mayor. Would it be possible for you to go back to the one photograph you have of the 5G high band antenna that Verizon is going to use?
The diagram?
Oh, I'm sorry, the photograph, not the well, yeah, you can look at the diagram too, but the photograph, that's the diagram. Go to that photograph that you have. I think it looked like it was one of Dewey Beach. Yeah, this one here.
No, that's it.
Can you had one that was closer. Yeah. That, to me, that is so junked up that it's not even aesthetically acceptable. I think the cone, the cylinder on top is also 5G, but it's the mid-range band. I'm probably below 4 or 5 gigahertz. But the Verizon bandwidth is really little, and they've got to have those flat-faced, junked-up antennas. And if I had to guess, I'd guess that's what this diagram here actually is going to look like when they're installed. So I'm totally with you. If we could figure out some way, just some way to keep our existing lamps without the antennas on them, I would jump through hoops to get that done. So I think that's a great idea, and I'm sure the Boardwalk Committee would really be behind you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else? No thoughts? Go ahead, Commissioner Gossett.
Just a question. How would we approach Verizon then, that with this alternative of going onto the western side of the boardwalk on their 16 positions? Is that something that we need to come up with diagrams, or just to begin a discussion with them, or how does this all start? Any thoughts?
Let me turn it over to either Sharon or Kevin because based on my request, they did approach Verizon, and let me tell you where we're at with them. We didn't get anywhere, but it's essentially the response. But again, I wanted to bring it in front of the commissioners. Sharon, what was?
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, we did approach and contact Verizon, Bonnie Metz, who you've heard from, but haven't really, she hasn't really responded. She was going to take it to her team, her engineers, and get back to us with any comment, but haven't heard from her. That was about 10 days ago, so we're still waiting to hear.
So while we're waiting to hear from them, I thought let's put it on the agenda for the commissioners to talk about, because if there's no interest, then we want to withdraw our conversation with Verizon and let them go on their way. But if there is interest, then we want to get back with them and tell them we're pretty aggressive about desiring to change the program, especially if we emphasize that we do not want visible conduits to access our light bases. That we want something that's pristine and looks exactly like we've got. Commissioner Gay? I'm sorry, Commissioner Gossett, do you have anything more?
I was just, if we pursue this, which I would strongly support, going back to Verizon about looking at the west side of the boardwalk for installation of these, would it also be possible that we would have access for future use to those poles, perhaps for video or some other type of electronics that the city may anticipate future needs for?
Thank you, Commissioner. Again, I don't even know whether all this is feasible. If you recall, Verizon said 2 years ago that they could not put them on the west side. Well, I wonder if that's true or not. If it comes down to it and they don't have an option to put them on the east side, will they make it work on the west side? Now, remember, when I was in Bethany Beach, I brought some pictures back that it appeared that all their Verizon antennas are on the west side of the boardwalk there. And if I recall correctly, all their antennas were at the street ends. They were none mid-block. So if they can do it down there, why isn't it feasible here? So maybe it's possible to do that. But this is really a conversation on whether we direct the city manager and public works to continue conversation with Verizon to try to achieve a different program that is currently proposed, and something that in my mind would be more aesthetically pleasing. Commissioner Gay?
Yes, first of all, I'm delighted that we have the opportunity to revisit this, because I remember the discussion we had at I think it was maybe even at a special meeting a couple months ago. I was very frustrated that it seemed to be too late. So all the more reason that we should try to really get it right this time. I also agree with what Commissioner Egregious said about the junkiness of that photograph you showed at the one near Belmore. We have to be able to do better than that. It just looks terrible. But I guess one question I have is, are we talking about the same number of poles, whether it's east or west? In other words, we're talking 16 in either case, right?
Well, I don't know. Kevin, do you know the locations? Are they the proposed ones on the east side? Are they located at each street end plus one mid-block? Because if so, then the one mid-block would be removed, which means there would be fewer antenna. Do you know placement?
Thank you, Mayor. No, I don't think we really know exactly, because, when we went back to them, as Sharon said, 10 days ago and talked to them, and one of the things that they brought up was you don't have 18 street ends, right? So to replace, it's not a one-for-one replacement. So they've got to go back to their engineers and look and see if they can get the coverage they need just from the street ends. The other piece of that is that, that's just Verizon. And we have not heard from AT&T if they're going to want anything 5G related near the boardwalk. And, if we have Verizon and AT&T, maybe we have one at each side of the street end. But we just don't know that. And Verizon has not gotten back to us on kind of a one-for-one replacement of the boardwalk lights. based on the street end concept.
And that's a very important note, I believe, you know, if you put a new antenna at a street end, it might be on the north side of the street end because you want to allow the south side for future installation by AT&T. So, anything else, Susan?
That's it, thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Srnowski?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm also glad that we have an opportunity to look at this again. From an aesthetics standpoint, I think we absolutely should say that no exposed conduits are allowed. And if that's not in our design manual, it certainly should be. My only fear with switching from the east side to the west side of the boardwalk is that, you know, if they were able to use existing light poles, now we have 16 new poles going up to muck up the landscape or the horizon or the sky. So I think that would be my only caution, is that having a whole bunch of new poles go up rather than utilizing existing ones, whether they be streetlights or utility poles. But I'm glad we have the opportunity to look at this again.
Well, I'd almost rather have new poles on the west side and deal with them because I think they kind of get disguised generally rather than booger up the east side light. So it's a matter of taste, I guess. We each have individual aesthetics. But that's why I think this exercise I thought was important to get feedback from the commissioners, but also feedback from the public, you know, that's going to be looking at these also, whether they are on their street end or, you know, Star of the Sea folks obviously might have one on the north and south side of their buildings. Commissioner Legree?
Thank you, Mayor. I keep repeating this. The Ninth Circuit found that aesthetics are legally enforceable, and that is a consideration that the telecommunications companies have to take into consideration because it's a legally enforceable stipulation. I thank you for holding firm. I agree that my problem with the one at the end of Stokely and the one at the on the boardwalk, that the tube antennas, is the aesthetics of that big old electrical box that they hang on the side. Yeah, I agree. And I'm sure that Dr. Trejos and Strange are pulling their hair out because the future of the antennas is probably going to be something. 6G is going to be totally different, and these things are going to change all the time. So if we could keep our lights as they are on the east side of the boardwalk, let us make those dark sky compliant and deal with what we have. And if the antennas are on the west side, they can change them out every other week or do whatever they want. But I agree. Let's keep our antennas on the east, or our street lamps on the east side. Let's keep our brand and go ahead and encourage the telecommunications companies to use the west side of the boardwalk. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Byrne?
Yeah, Mayor, thanks for this opportunity to take advantage of this pause time. I certainly agree with what the other commissioners have said, and I think you and the city manager and team should take advantage of this time and move ahead with some alternative options here. I like the way Commissioner Legree just stated that, to go with the dark sky compliant lighting on our current posts and no visible conduits, if at all possible, from these vendors. We need to make it visually pleasing, aesthetically pleasing. I like that thought of exploring how that could happen on the west side. They certainly have my support.
Thank you. Let's go to the members of the public, before we conclude. We've got Carol Everhart. Do you have anything to say on the location of, wireless antennas on the boardwalk?
No comment at this time.
Thank you, Carol. Walter Brittingham?
I congratulate you for rethinking and pulling things back to what should have been set up the first time. The west side of the boardwalk is far superb, and the facilities getting the piping to them is not a problem, but you're thinking the right way. Good job.
Thank you, Walter. Dr. Trejos?
Yes, Mayor, I think Commissioner Legree has stated it pretty well. Kind of like we're pulling our hair out. One thing that's in the back of my mind is, as I mentioned to the Board of Commissioners, I think it was back in August 6th, was the fact that not only are we dealing with 5G, but we're looking at the future of 6G antennas and the exponential increase in these antenna sites. It would be nice to consider placing them on the west side, provided coverage can be obtained, because now you're bringing them closer to structures, closer to buildings, and the coverages could be disrupted. But again, more importantly is, let's think future and 6G and the exponential and where all those towers going to go. Just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Michael Strange?
Yes, I've been pulling what hair I have left out on this topic for quite some time. And I want to reiterate to everyone that it's extremely important that you understand the applicable law. And unfortunately, many of the commissioners have been operating under misinformation that's inappropriate, that have been provided by AT&T and Verizon. They're only feeding you enough to sort of get you to go along without letting you know what your rights are, as Jay pointed out. And I want to reiterate the explicitness of this and how important it is. That there's 3 criteria that are never preempted. If they're reasonable, no more burdensome than applied to other types of infrastructure. Now, the other types of infrastructure is not telecommunications, it's all infrastructure, public infrastructure. That includes sewer, water, power, and telecommunications. And they have to be published in advance. And as Commissioner Legree pointed out, they can be subjective, because generally speaking, environmental issues and aesthetic issues are very personal. And it's hard sometimes to make them objective. So that was thrown out when the FCC required objectivity. The Ninth Circuit threw it out and said, no, because it's irrational and doesn't make sense and goes against 100 years worth of research. The other part is, and Mayor Mills, I usually agree with you on most everything, the carte blanche moving to the west side is a terrible idea. Because if you take into account all of the antenna systems that may in fact be coming, you will end up creating a boardwalk that it looks very tunnel-like with poles on both sides of the structure. What can be done on the west side is, where appropriate, is smaller installations can be put in, just as was done on the bathhouse, the bathroom. And the reason that the telecommunications companies want to put these in public right-of-ways is because it's cheaper. It costs them more money and creates a whole bunch of contractual issues when they place them on private property or on private facilities, which is what used to be done in the past. Verizon, with this delay, and I want to reiterate that under the criteria that we are allowed to require from aesthetic consideration, is AT&T, I'm sorry, well, it could be AT&T, but since Verizon is the one with the request for 16 poles, we absolutely, positively, and completely, legally, within our right to demand that they place their 5G antennas on light fixtures and poles that are similar, if that's what we desire, to the ones that are currently installed, which means they have to take the cost and build it the way we want for aesthetic reasons. And that's fully documented in your CDP from the beach and sea. The other thing that's very critical, it can be done technically, legally, scientifically, meet all standards, and you could in fact replace all the poles on the beach with similar poles that we currently have. And I would point out, comparing it to other infrastructure, the ocean outfall in Rehoboth Beach cost us $5 to $10 million more than it otherwise would have cost if we had elected to take a different route to put it into the ocean. But had we done that, even though it would have been more cost effective, the public perception of what we have done if we did that more centralized is that, you mean you want me to swim in the place where you're dumping my poop? And if you realize the public is easily swayed by misinformation, and we know that from the attack on our Capitol in January. So it's very important from a public perception perspective that we do things in a way that is complementary to our environment. And we can demand and require that telecommunications provider, in this case Verizon, if they have to install new poles, new lights, new infrastructure, new conduit, and do it in such a way that it looks very similar to what we currently have, we can require that. And we should not be afraid to ask for it. Thank you.
Well, Mike, your last point you made several times, we are working with Verizon, and they are doing the exact design that we've agreed to, and that is using our poles. Even though they have to replace the poles, they're the same design essentially because they need to replace them to beef them up a little bit, have a bigger interior. So I'm not sure their point there, but they are achieving the design standard that we've set for them. My point of this discussion is, are we amenable to that? I still am thinking about antennas on the west side. And I disagree with your comment about creating a tunnel. In the wide commercial areas, if they're at all the street ends, they kind of blend in with the buildings and everything. I'm not sure they disturb me at all. On the narrow south end, yes, if you put all the antennas at the west edge, directly touching the west edge of the boardwalk, I agree with you. We would be creating two lines of lights and antennas, and that would create a tunnel effect. But they're not. As I mentioned earlier, in the narrow south area, the westerly antennas would be a minimum of 20 feet off, maybe 30 feet off the boardwalk. So I disagree with you there. So obviously, we've got difference of opinions. Commissioner Gay.
I just was going to add, I don't have to have an answer to this today. I'm not sure we have one, but if obviously we're emphasizing aesthetics quite a bit today. And do we need to take another look? I realize the ordinance was not only passed, it was revised already once. But do we need to take a look at that and make sure we have the standards in place that allow us to compel Verizon to do what we want? I don't know the answer.
We'll leave that as a rhetorical question. I don't know. Commissioner Legree.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gay, the ordinance has two references, as I remember. Both of them just say that it has to be stealth technology adopted. That's all I remember in the ordinance that speaks specifically about aesthetics, and I lament that fact. My question is, first off, the Stockley Street pole with the Verizon or with the AT&T mid-band antenna is 48 feet from the boardwalk, right? As I speak, I sure wouldn't want them any closer, and I'm wondering why that pole has to be so high. Could it come down to 12 feet and perhaps look more like the street lamps on the boardwalk? I think we could ask these telecommunications companies to make better looking antennas, and certainly for the commercial part of town, as other commissioners have talked about. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioners. There's no other comment. What I would propose is, I haven't heard any real negative about pursuing this. Again, it may not come to fruition because of technicalities and what Verizon can and can't do. But I believe I've interpreted this as a conversation as, yeah, let's investigate it. Let's let the city manager and Public Works continue to talk with Verizon on this. I would say, Jay, if you have an agenda for your Boardwalk committee that's to be posted today, perhaps you could consider putting this topic on your agenda in a week from today, be able to analyze it and bring us back your committee's report also. Considering that you've got, two committee members that live on the board, no, 3 committee members that live on the Boardwalk, they might have a unique perspective to share with us as well. So that is how I would like to proceed. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, as we're waiting for a response from Verizon on this, I think, Mayor, you mentioned earlier that the city of Bethany Beach has their poles on the west side of the Boardwalk as best you've seen. We also know that Dewey is having some extreme challenges with the placement of antennas in their city. May I suggest that our city manager and our director of public works reach out to their counterparts in those 2 cities just to see how Bethany Beach accomplished the west side placement, and also if Dewey has made any headway in the placement of their poles for more pleasing placement and lack of, the messiness on the poles and the hanging of multiple antenna. But I think if they have also experienced some work with Verizon or even AT&T, we possibly could learn from either their mistakes or how they accomplished the west side placement of the poles.
Very good. Thank you. You want to say something?
Is that okay?
Yeah. You know what?
Commissioner Gossett, I did last week speak with the town manager in Dewey Beach and did receive some insight that I won't share here, but I have some information that could or could not be relevant, but I think it's a good start.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. Anybody else? Not seeing anybody else. We'll go with that program, and this will be on the agenda in the future. In fact, probably every meeting we'll put it on until we have a resolution one way or the other. Again, Verizon's not going to be making any changes immediately. They'll probably still be searching out solutions to their logistics problems now. But we want them to, we're going to be telling them we want them to consider additional option of putting them on the west side to clean up aesthetics, et cetera. Commissioner Gossett, your hand still up? Nope. Commissioner Legree?
Mayor, we're not having a meeting next week. We have homework that we're going to be doing for the June meeting. And we will add this to the June meeting agenda, depending on what city manager, what transpires there. I'd also would like to know what, I think Dewey Beach hired a professional person to interface with the telecommunication companies. And
very good.
Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you for letting me know that. Appreciate it. With that, we're going to close this topic. We'll go to the next item of new business. It's discuss hiring. Oh, and I wanted to thank Dr. Trejos and Michael Strange. You have certain expertise in cell sites and wireless, and we appreciate your input. Next item of new business is discuss hiring an engineering consultant to advise in matters of undergrounding utilities for the Wilmington Baltimore Avenue Streetscape Project. Kevin, would you be able to indicate why do we need to consider hiring a separate consultant for undergrounding? And obviously the answer is because our Rossi design engineering consultants, this is out of their job scope, I believe, correct?
That's correct.
That's it. So we would like to allow city manager, authorize her to seek out interviewing and hiring an engineering consultant, again, to advise in matters of undergrounding. That is outside the scope of Rossi. We have indicated as a body, as well as the task force has indicated, that the desire is to see placement of on-ground boxes and transformers, et cetera. And to be able to do that and get some additional consultation to the level that we want, we'll need to hire somebody. Any questions on that? Commissioner Legree, go ahead. You're muted.
Congratulations on doing the right thing. I really applaud that. And you're going to get some great information because it won't be coming from Delmarva Power. And go for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Not hearing any objections, then we'll direct the city manager to look to hire an engineering consultant to advise in matters of undergrounding for the Wilmington, Baltimore project. Any comments from the public? Carol Everhart? No. Walter Brittingham?
Fine, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Trejos?
Yeah, yes, Mayor, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I too am in total concurrence with the hiring of a outside engineering firm to deal with the proposed undergrounding of utilities. I think the issue before us is that the engineering for the requirements for undergrounding are going to be extensive, especially when we have to take into consideration all the engineering concerns, including the FEMA flood zone AE issues when we think about undergrounding. I do have one concern that I would like to express with regard to a consulting firm, with regard to whether or not certain individuals would be able to have input into this discussion. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. With regards to engineering consulting firm, we need the proper input from individuals who reside in or have businesses in the city of Rehoboth Beach, who have engineering qualifications to work with the engineering firm to address the issues of undergrounding utilities could result in significant delays in the overall streetscape project. What I mean by this is the following. I believe it would be most appropriate for the Board of Commissioners to strongly consider permitting individuals with engineering qualifications, such as myself and Michael Strange, to work with an engineering firm to come to a proper engineering evaluation and recommendations concerning the undergrounding of utilities that can be acted upon by the Board of Commissioners. If such interaction during the consulting phase was not to be permitted, then subsequent input with regard to the findings of the consulting firm and any modifications to their work would again cause a potential unnecessary delay in the project. I feel that it would be, again, appropriate, if possible, that with an engineering firm such as that, the individuals who have the qualifications to be able to discuss that with an engineering firm, as I mentioned above, or a moment ago, would be appropriate and a consideration for the Board of Commissioners. Thank you much.
Thank you, Doctor. Well, Sharon was here and listened to all that. We appreciate your input there. Mike Strange, do you have any input on undergrounding, hiring a consultant?
I think Jay's observations are dead on, and I agree completely with Dr. Trejos' observations as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Jan Conacy, is she still on?
Yes, I am. And I have no comment. I agree with
right.
both Michael and Dr. Trejos.
Very good. Thank you, Jan. If there's no further comments on this, we've got our marching orders on an engineering consultant. With that, we'll go to the next item of new business, discuss hiring of a city planner. Turn this over to Sharon. If you recall, or you may not recall, but the current chair, Jeffrey Trunzo of the Planning Commission, has mentioned the desire to have a city planner to help his commission. And I believe I've mentioned it a couple times. And so I talked with the city manager to say, what do we need to do to move forward? And what is, could she explain perhaps what the job scope is or what the value is of a city planner? So we can get the buy-in of the commissioners or feedback from the commissioners. Sharon?
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, you're correct, actually. So the concept of hiring a city planner is not new. I've certainly heard that before during my time here, and it has been mentioned recently that the city's chair of the Planning Commission, Mr. Trenzo, made a strong declaration advising that the Planning Commission would not move forward with at least 2 or 3 planned hotels that will be in the pipeline soon without the benefit of a city planner on board to assist through that process. I'm of the opinion that the city does not need a full-time planner, but more likely a contracted planner who would assist with newer projects represented to the city. So just very briefly, in my time in working with city planners, and of course for in areas that are much larger than the city of Rehoboth Beach geographically, a city planner assists in making long and short-term plans and goals about the use of land. Pretty much in a different situation here. But a planner would consider the future needs of the city's population, and they determine the best way to use the city's land and the resources. They help draft legislation, plan the construction of buildings, help protect the environment, and suggest different zoning regulations for private property. City planners may choose to specialize in different areas, whether it's transportation, community development. In our case, we would need someone for redevelopment, potentially code enforcement or environmental and design standards. But usually, you know, so I asked myself the question, what would a city planner do and how would the city benefit from that? And I think a planner would emphasize the interest of residents and our businesses to effectively influence contractors and their clients of the broader consideration of looking out for the needs of the city's residents and businesses. A city planner would answer questions of how our people live and work in the city, how our tourists interact, and what would guide orderly development, laying out any new structure, and how that would influence the city's culture and surrounding uses. Although predominantly concerned with the planning of occupied spaces in the community, planners are also responsible for planning for efficient transportation, which is certainly topical here. They're also responsible for a sense of inclusion and opportunity for all kinds of culture and different needs, including economic development or business development, improving health, and conserving areas of natural environmental significance within the city. And a planner would benefit the city while questioning, as I said, how people here live and work and socialize while realizing the signs of the current time and even trending into the future. These changes are constantly reflecting in planning methodologies, zoning codes, and policies, makes for a highly technical, social, economic, environmental field, and also a political field in some ways. So as we discussed, and as I've related, Mayor Mills also, this is not a new concept. We might be using a planner to initiate plans for our residential neighborhoods. We would not be using that for residential neighborhoods, as you know, they've already been established. But a planner could certainly guide city officials through the arduous process of defining the specific needs of our city while watching out for design plans from private entities that may not relate to the intended needs of what is defined and desired, I'll say, in the city of Rehoboth Beach. So basically, that's my view of how a planner would benefit the city. I don't think that, well, we need a full-time planner. We're primarily built out. We're looking at redevelopment, so it could certainly help. And I agree with Chair Trunzo that this is an area that should be looked at.
Thank you, Sharon. If we're going to do this, I think we need to do it as expeditiously as possible. Why? Because we've got 330 Rehoboth Avenue coming in front of us. We've got the Bellhaven. We've got whatever else is coming. We've got ongoing projects, the CDP over the next many months in front of us. We've got ongoing as the Wilmington Baltimore Streetscape Project that maybe if we got them on soon enough, that person could help with some input on there. So I'd like to get your feedback. Commissioner Calusi?
Yes. So Sharon, you've worked with city planners in the past. So if we were the idea of having someone contractor come in, would we just put out an RFP basically to select someone that we thought would match up with our needs?
No, not necessarily. This is a specialized area, and I think administratively, I could advertise or talk to my colleagues in trying to find an individual who would even be interested in some contracting work. Contact the state agencies and even some county agencies where I think this kind of work would benefit the city, and an individual might desire to do some contracted work.
So I would think that there's probably some firms that are, locally, regionally noted or nationally noted even, that I think we want to make sure we get someone with a lot of experience. We have some very specific things coming up, and I think that would be important.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gay?
And first of all, I agree. This is absolutely critically needed. I felt that way when I was on the Planning Commission, and now, given a lot of the redevelopment that's coming our way, it's just all the more critical. But I understand, and Sharon, all of the not qualifications, but I guess tasks that you outlined just then is absolutely right on in terms of what we would want from someone. And I wasn't sure going into this discussion if we were talking about hiring someone, even on a part-time basis, or we were talking about a contracted person, and it sounds like it's the latter. So I would just say that, I think everything you read earlier sounds like a terrific job description for someone. But if it's not a staff person and you don't have a job description, and we're not doing an RFP, which I think maybe we should, then all of our goals, all of the things we want, tying in the CDP, all those things should be part of some document that's understood that these are what we expect of the contractor, whether that's a job description or an RFP or what. But I do think it needs to be stated just as you read them earlier. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Legree?
Thank you, Mayor. Could we have Chairman Trunzo? He has boots on the ground. Could we have him talk to us a little bit about it? I mean, his position is strong, and I'd like to hear a little bit from him. That's one thing. Number two, is a planner going to walk in here and throw up their hands and say, you folks have code problems? You need to code revision before you hire a planner. And maybe that's another consideration that we should be talking about. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We will be talking about code review in the near future. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Byrne?
Jumping to this last comment, code review is critically important. We've been saying that for a long time, and it does need to get up in front of us so that we can bring in the kind of help that we need for that. But to this specific point, I think it's an outstanding idea. We need this in the city. We do not have this expertise. And I think to bring in a contractual person when needed will give us the professional support that we need and help us end up where we want to. I mean, there's consequences of all of this kind of development and thinking it through. And there's unintended consequences and there's positive consequences. And city planner brought up, among other things, the environment, a city's economy. We can impact those things in very positive kinds of ways if we have a city planner giving us that kind of professional guidance. I certainly support this concept going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, I certainly also support the hiring either of a consultant or a part-time city planner. It is something that cities needed for quite some time. We've been with the aspect of code revisions or updates in that regard, and also zoning changes is dramatically needed for us. But I would think that what City Manager Lynn quoted of the roles and responsibilities are needed, certainly to bring those into the hiring description, but in conjunction also with the Planning Commission, but also as importantly, building and licensing, to know what's on the books and how the challenges, when you talk about boots on the ground, we certainly have our building and licensing department with boots on the ground that have needs and priorities of revisions or additional information that we've been doing it this way for so long, and there's different ways to do things now. But I would strongly support it, and the sooner the better to bring someone aboard. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sernowski?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. It's long overdue. So I'm in support. Thank you.
With that, we'll go to the members of the public. Carol Everhart, anything to say about a city planner?
I think it is definitely something that should be researched and in places where I've worked and we had a city planner, it worked very well.
Thank you, Carol. Walter Brittingham?
Thank you. I think with the issues that are coming up in the city and the technical parts of it, and I encourage you to continue working that. Agree with the city manager.
Thank you. Dr. Trejos?
I concur, and I have no further comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Michael Strange?
Yes, I concur, and I have really two comments. One as a citizen, which I'll address first, and the other as a planning commissioner. As a citizen, Rehoboth Beach, and I agree 100% with all of the characteristics that Sharon pointed out. And then she concluded by saying, but we don't need a planner on the city payroll. That I would disagree with. I think the city has gone far too long without having that type of multi-dimensional resource available. And right now, and we can see, as with several of the issues that are coming up, have come up, are currently dealing with 5G and other aesthetics and considerations, that it would be nice to have someone who Sharon can rely on and the Planning Commission can rely on and talk to on these various and sundry issues relating to the management of urban planning within a city. And in our particular case, it covers everything that we have to deal with as a city, from the health and welfare, aesthetics, etc. Now, as a planning commissioner, we rely on the success of the Planning Commission due to the fact, and essentially it's a Delphi type of structure, where it relies on the various disciplines of the people that are on that committee. But once we get proposals, it's almost too late. It really needs things to be vetted from a perspective of a planning perspective, not just a code enforcement perspective by the department that does that. We need a planning perspective that can help inform the proposals that are coming forward before time and money has been expended by the individuals that are making these proposals, and now they feel locked in. And then they're now starting to challenge what the committee does, and it makes it much more difficult for us to execute in what would be an intelligent manner from the standpoint of the CDP to do it for the benefit of all citizens. And we've seen that occur most recently over the last couple of years. So I think, one, a planning consultant initially is absolutely needed, but for the longer term, you need someone with an MCRP or equivalent. I mean, I hold a doctorate in urban planning, so I have some knowledge of urban planning, but that's just by coincidence. I was on the planning commission when I was an engineer. So it's just the various backgrounds. But yes, I think you desperately need a full-time planner, but in the interim, it would be great to have a consultant to help things along, especially in light of what's coming up now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Jan Conacy?
Yes, I do have some very strong feelings about this, spending many years on the Planning Commission, where we also asked for a planner, and periodically we did get a consultant, different consultants. And one of the feelings I have is it so much depends upon the planner you hire, their philosophy, their background. It's really crucial because over the years, we've had consultants who, frankly, were not as good as other consultants, didn't really understand the dynamics of the community. And it hurts in those cases, not helps. So I think hiring the right person and maybe having a consultant at the beginning so that you're not tied in might be the best way to go. But this is not a new issue. And I think David Mellon would be, happy to address the need for a consultant from his years as in the past on the Planning Commission. The other thing I want to comment on is zoning. And even more than we need a planning person, we need a rewrite of our zoning code. And that is not something that a planner would do. If you look, for instance, at most communities, and I'll use, all over Florida, Susan's community in Bryn Mawr, my community in Dover, when they hire, their planner does not do a whole rewrite of a zoning code. It's usually a consulting firm that does that, and there are many of them. When Ed McMahon was here, he left us with a list of potential firms that we could hire and consultants to rewrite our entire zoning code. We need that. That is so crucial, so important. Everybody has pretty much indicated that. And we need it now. And, we just sold the Boy Scout house and, that money isn't allocated, and you certainly don't need $1 million to do a rewrite of the zoning code. But I just think that is so, so, so crucially important. And we have seen the absolute disaster of our zoning code in every large project that has come before the Planning Commission over the last at least 5 years, if not more. So thank you.
Thank you, Jan. With that, I'm hearing from the commissioners that we're going to stay the course and let the city manager seek the hiring of a city planner as noted. Any further questions? If not, we'll go to the next item of new business. Let's discuss House Bill number 146, which if adopted would integrate local and state voter registrations and its impact on municipal elections. This, I believe, was presented by Representative Shoup in the Delaware legislature. It is somewhat new. Let me see if I can find it. Nope. Well, while I look for it, Glenn, do you want to give a little synopsis and preview of how it might impact Rehoboth Beach? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
Sure, Mayor. So House Bill 146 was introduced this session to bring all the municipalities, 57 of them in Delaware, into one state statute could require municipalities to use the state voter registration system for purposes of its municipal elections. we of course have non-resident voting, which most municipalities in Delaware do not have. There is a provision in the proposed legislation that tries to accommodate that. So it specifically says if a municipality permits voting by non-residents, the municipality shall maintain the municipality's own voter registration system as a source of the municipality's list of registered non-resident voters. So the bottom line is, you know, Donna currently maintains a list of, Donna Moore currently maintains a list of non-resident voters. We would need to continue to do that even if this legislation is adopted, but we'd have to use the state system for all the resident voters. One thing I think that we should be aware of and maybe pay special attention to is that the bill does talk in terms of residents and non-residents. And I've always been concerned about that use of the word resident because as we've been through a lot of these election changes over the past few years, it's been clear that a person can have more than one residence. So I can have a residence in Wilmington, Delaware, in Chevy Chase, Maryland, and in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. And you know, am I able to vote in each of those residences? We're lucky in that when we did the last charter change, we carefully defined resident to include we defined resident to make clear that it's the place where the person is domiciled. So I think under the currently proposed bill, the use of resident, the word resident would be informed by our charter definition of resident. But I want to watch this bill closely to see if any changes are made to it where it specifically defines resident in a way that was inconsistent with our charter. That's the only area that I see that I want to watch closely. Otherwise, you know, it's just a question of whether we are supportive of using the state registration system for resident voters.
Well, do you think it would be prudent for Sharon, you and Donna to get together and review this and critique it? And I know the Delaware League, of course, has been very interested in this. They had a meeting on Friday, which I could not attend because I had other functions. I need to find out the outcome of that. The Delaware League indicated that out of that meeting, that Representative Shoup was in no hurry to rush this forward. He wanted to hear from everybody. And so there may likely still be time for us to critique it and forward him our recommendations.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I agree with that completely. I've not had a chance to speak with Donna Moore about it. I'm sure Donna will have questions upon reading it. She's incredibly good at handling our elections and keeping our voter registration system, our rolls up to date. So I think that's a good course forward.
Any questions from the commissioners?
Yeah, Mayor.
Yes.
Dick Byrne here. A couple of comments. I don't know how much time-wise this will be hurried. I did get word this morning that this bill is going to be brought up and heard tomorrow, Tuesday, May 11th, in the House Administration Committee. Our own representative and speaker, Pete Schwarzkopf, serves on the House Administration Committee, and so they're going to have a hearing on this tomorrow. And when I did bring this up a couple of weeks ago, I commented on some very positive things about this, that this legislation is designed to streamline voter registration. It's likely to make it easier for people to vote in municipal elections like our own in Rehoboth Beach. It does provide, like the solicitor just commented, that when one registers with the state, you will automatically be registered in the municipality, and that it also gives the municipality the opportunity to register non-residents. It's likely going to increase voter registration. That's a very positive thing in a democracy. And I think it would do us well to provide support for this and let Speaker Schwarzkopf know that we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from commissioners?
Yes.
Go ahead, Commissioner Gossett.
Yeah, I agree that this is certainly would assist in local registration of Delaware residents, but we, among a few other municipalities in Delaware, have that unique position of allowing the privilege of voting in or as a non-resident, but as a leaseholder or property owner. So I think that we really need to pay attention to our charter in Section 7, paragraph D, specifically about qualifications for voting. And I would think that this legislation most likely will pass. It may have a few tweaks to it, but I think that we need to really take a close look specifically at Section 7, paragraph D, and because we will be hosting two sets of books, if you will, one set of records that is issued by the state, and then our local registrations for property owners. So it will need to really be reviewed in fine detail so that no one is left out, but only actually the qualified individuals are allowed to register to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment from the commissioner? Let's see here. Nobody's got their hands up. Let's go to the public. Carol Everhart, any comments on HB 146?
No comment.
Thank you, Carol. Walter Brittingham.
Pass.
Dr. Trejos.
No further comment.
Thank you. Michael Strange. Did he just sign off? Jan Conacy.
I'm in total agreement with Commissioner Byrne in wearing my former Common Cause hat, anything that increases the voter. One time when I worked the election, we had several people come in who thought they were registered to vote because they'd registered at the state, had no idea that it didn't automatically include registering, that it didn't transfer to our city records. And so they weren't allowed to vote. And I think that easily Donna can keep two separate set of books. And I think that we absolutely should support this.
Thank you, Jan. Well, what I'd like to do is put this on the agenda for our May regular meeting, and we can determine a path forward with that. In the meantime, Glenn, if you and Sharon would get together with Donna well prior to the next meeting, and give us any notes of anything that we might, if we need to make suggestions for any edits, and pass those on. And Dick, if you would keep us apprised of what comes out of the committee meeting tomorrow, we'd appreciate it. Any other comments on 146? If not, we'll move on to the next item of business, which is commissioner announcements or comments. Anybody? Commissioner Legree?
I have one more comment on, well, two comments. Number one, congratulations on the new doc for Commissioner Calusi. That's great. Number two, the hiring of a planner is such a critical part of the future of our city. I would like to be able to discuss that before we actually do the hire. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gay?
Yes.
And then Commissioner Byrne. Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, and in addition to what Jay just said about the celebration on Friday about the dock, I would also just like to thank everyone who participated the Friday before in the Arbor Day celebration over at the elementary school. I think it was the largest turnout I've ever seen, and to be selected as the state's official site for Arbor Day and to have the governor and other cabinet members here, it was just a real honor for the city, and I was so pleased that day. So thank you all. And thank you, Mayor, for your comments and that day.
Thank you. It went very well. Thanks to all those that did planning. Commissioner Byrne?
Yes, those were great events and reflect really positively on all of us. Two quick comments. One, just a reminder that tomorrow is a school board election for the state, but also for Cape, May 11th, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The polls are open at Rehoboth Elementary School. Turnout is always so low in these, and yet it's critical. It's our school system. Please vote tomorrow. And then the second comment is just a follow up to Commissioner Coluzzi several weeks ago, bringing up the idea of possible artwork on the barriers. And I'll touch base on this tomorrow when we talk about our COVID response. But just wanted to give you a heads up that, that because that's not going to work, I've reached out to art and science instructors at Rehoboth Elementary, and we will have an opportunity I'll bring up tomorrow for some 5th grade students to do some artwork that possibly could go on our barriers, at least for a few weeks. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. If there's no further commissioner comments, I'd like to go to the next item, which is review future meeting dates. Of course, tomorrow, May 11th, 3:00 p.m. is our special meeting focusing on the pandemic. The next meeting after that is Friday, May 21st. That's our regular meeting. And then that's it. We've had citizen comment. If there's no further comments, I'd like to thank all those that are here today, including the watchers and participants, and adjourn the meeting at 11:30 a.m. We are going to have about a 1 minute, you want a 1 minute? We're going to have about a 1 minute recess, and then we're going to go to the next meeting. Thank you very much. Well, I am going to take a little break. Good morning. It is Monday, May 10th, 2021. This is a virtual special meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 11:33 a.m. I'll take a roll call because this is a new formal meeting. Commissioner Richard Byrne.
Here.
Commissioner Pat Coluzzi.
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Jay Legree.
Here.
Commissioner Ed Stranowski.
Here.
Commissioner Susan Gay,
Here.
and I'm Mayor Stan Mills. We have a quorum, we have a full complement of commissioners, and we're able to formally conduct business today. There is no correspondence on this that's been identified. I'd like to say that the purpose of this special meeting is to conduct a strategy session to include receiving legal advice and opinion from the city solicitor regarding litigation, Captain Hancherick et al. Versus City of Rehoboth Beach, C.A. number 1:32-CV-00521-UNA. This item of business may include an executive session because it involves mayor and commissioners receiving legal advice and opinion from an attorney regarding litigation as permitted by Delaware C, Section 10,004B4 of the State Freedom of Information Act. But I assume we want to go into executive session. If so, I would like to entertain a motion. And if you would read the reasons for going into executive session as I just read. Looking for a motion?
Mayor,
to
I
go
move,
in-
I move to go into executive session to receive legal advice.
As permitted by 29 Del C, Section 10,004B4, correct?
Correct, thank you.
We have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Shranowski and a second by Commissioner Byrne to enter into executive session to receive legal advice and opinion from an attorney regarding litigation as permitted by 29 Del C, Section 10,004B4. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. And with that, we are going to enter an executive session. I would like to say, before we cut everybody off, that we have no idea on the time frame, how long we'll be in executive session. We'll let you know that we are not taking any action inside the executive session. If there were any action to be taken, it would be when we come back out of executive session into public session. However, I do not anticipate that we will be taking any formal action, rather just receiving legal advice today. With that, we are going into executive session. Thank you very much. Are we ready? All righty. I'd like to entertain a motion to go back into public session.
Mayor, I move to exit executive session and move back into public session.
We have a second. We've got a motion by Commissioner Sernowski and a second by Commissioner Susan Gay to come out of executive session back into public session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. And we are now back in executive session. With that, there's been no actions identified for us to take. And with that, I'll adjourn the meeting at 12:06 p.m. Thank you very much.